Good day, Mr. Faris. Today I will be presenting a critical evaluation of Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory, focusing on how relevant it is in today's modern world, especially with current research findings. My main argument in this presentation is that Erikson's psychosocial development theory is still useful, especially in explaining identity development. However, it is no longer fully relevant in today's context. Modern research shows that identity is not limited to a single stage, but actually continuous throughout life. In addition, technology, especially social media, has changed how people explore and express their identity. On top of that, cultural differences also influence how identity develops, with Erikson did not fully consider. So, overall, I argue that Erikson's theory should still be used as a foundation, but it needs to be updated with more modern perspectives. Erik Erikson developed this theory in 1968 and it focuses on psychosocial development, which means how social experiences influence psychological growth. One of his key contribution was the idea that development does not stop in childhood. Instead, it continues throughout the entire lifespan. He also emphasized that relationships such as with family, peers and society plays a very important role in shaping person's identity. Erikson's theory is made up of 8 stages, and each stage includes what he calls a psychosocial crisis. This crisis is not something negative, but rather a challenge that a person needs to deal with, for example, trust versus mistrust in infancy. How a person resolves each crisis will influence their personality and development in the future. The most important stage for this discussion is identity versus role confusion, which happens during adolescence. At this stage, individuals begin to explore who they are, including their values, beliefs, and future goals. If they successfully resolve this stage, they develop a clear sense of identity. If not, they may feel confused about their role in life. Okay, this diagram shows Erikson's 8 stages across the lifespan. As we can see, identity development is specifically placed during adolescence. However, this is one of the main points that modern research challenges because identity development may not be limited to just this stage. This study by Klimstra and Dennison in 2017 looked at how adolescents develop identity in the digital age. They found that social media allows individuals to explore multiple identities at the same time. For example, some may present themselves differently on different platforms. This suggests that identity development is not fixed in one stage but is continuous and flexible. This directly challenges Erikson's idea that identity is mainly formed during adolescence. This comparison clearly shows the difference between Erikson's theory and modern findings. Erikson believes identity develops mainly during adolescence and follows fixed stages. However, modern research shows that identity is more flexible, continuous across life, and is influenced by digital environment. This suggests that Erikson's theory may be too simplified for today's context. So, this diagram shows how identity development differs across cultures. In Western cultures, identity is based on personal goals and independence, but in collectivist cultures, identity is shaped more by family expectation and social role. This challenges Erikson's theory because he assumed development is universal, but in reality, identity development depends heavily on cultural context. Erikson theory has several strengths. It introduced the idea of lifelong development, and it is easy to understand and apply in real life settings like education and counseling. However, it also has clear limitations. It does not consider the role of technology. It is biased towards Western culture, and it assumes development happens in fixed stages, which may not reflect real life experiences. So, my final judgment is that Erickson's theory is still relevant, especially as a foundational framework in development psychology. However, it is not sufficient to explain model identity development on its own. It does not fully account for digital environments or cultural diversity. Therefore, the theory should not be completely replaced but must be integrated with modern research. It works best as a guiding framework rather than a complete explanation. In conclusion, Erickson's psychosocial development theory remains an important foundation in understanding identity development. However, modern research clearly shows that identity is more continuous and influenced by external factors such as technology and culture. Therefore, while the theory is still useful, it must be adapted and combined with newer perspectives to remain relevant in the 21st century. Here ends my presentation. Thank you for listening.